In today's archives, we're talking about when aggression escalates. In 2019, a Memphis pastor was shot and killed. 3 months ago, Latoshia Daniels took the stand during her sentencing hearing. She was ultimately sentenced to 20 years in prison for second-degree murder. But this story is not just about a sentence, it's about escalation. It's about what happens when emotional attachment turns into identity collapse. And it's about how aggression builds long before the final act. During the hearing, apologies were offered, family members spoke, emotion filled the courtroom. But today, we are not here to sensationalize this. We are here to analyze it. Because when aggression turns deadly, the warning signs are rarely sudden. They are layered. Let's begin with what lies underneath. On the surface, this looked like a tragic relationship that ended violently. An affair, a breakup, a reaction. But underneath that, there was attachment. When someone builds their identity around a relationship, that connection becomes more than companionship. It becomes validation, it becomes stability, it becomes emotional grounding. So when that relationship ends, the loss does not feel temporary. It feels threatening. I know you're thinking, like, in what ways does it feel threatening? Well, threatening to identity, threatening to worth, threatening to control. And when emotion regulation tools are weak or absent, pain does not simplify. Pain stay prevalent, present, and dominant. One thing pain does, it mutates. It shifts from pain to hurt to anger, from sadness to resentment, from vulnerability to justification. Instead of I'm hurting, the narrative becomes I was wronged. That eternal shift is where escalation begins. So let's analyze. When the pastor decided to end the relationship, that decision represented closure for one person. But psychologically, rejection does not always register as closure. For someone who is emotionally dependent, rejection can feel like erasure. It makes a person feel completely removed, erased, no more. The one who's doing the ending is not just saying, hey, I'm leaving, but I am moving on alone. But the other person is feeling like, well, all I'm being is what? Discarded, I'm being replaced, or I'm being diminished or dismissed. When identity is intertwined with another person, losing them can feel like losing oneself. That's when aggression begins to form. Not loudly, not immediately, but quietly. Through rumination, which is dwelling on negative feelings from the past, whether it's mistakes or worries or whatever. Unproductive cycles could play through conversations. They can play through mental rewriting events. And once anger begins to feel more empowering than vulnerability, something shifts. The focus changes. It stops being about healing and starts being about regaining control. That's the psychological crossroads. See, when violence happens, people ask, was it planned? Was it emotional? But psychologically, the answer is often layered. Emotional impulse does not mean random. Premeditation does not mean emotion was absent. Listening to the testimony in context, you can hear attachment. You can hear emotional dependency. You can hear hurt. Impulsive aggression is often chaotic and immediate, but escalation, fueled by rumination, can look calm on the outside. That is where the line blurs, because by the time action occurs, it may feel sudden in the movement. But the emotional buildup may have been happening internally for weeks or even months. Attachment intensifies perception. Rejection intensifies identity threat. Identity threat distorts reasoning. The real question is not simply whether the act was premeditated. The deeper question is, how long had the emotional escalation been building? Because emotional impulse is not always explosive. Sometimes it is pressure, and pressure, when unregulated, eventually seeks release. Now, I know you heard how when they say pressure, a bust a pipe. And to be perfectly honest, it's the truth. Violence is rarely the first decision. It's often the last stop on a road filled with smaller, unaddressed moments. Moments where someone could have stepped back, sought support, accepted loss, processed rejection, or regulated emotions. But when emotional pain is not interrupted, it hardens. And hardened emotion begins to justify action. Once the internal narrative becomes about regaining control rather than healing, the risk of escalation increases. That is the tragedy within the tragedy. Because aggression does not appear overnight. It builds. And how does it build? Quietly and eternally. The final act makes it visible to everyone else. This case is not about sensationalism. It's about understanding escalation. It's about recognizing how attachment can distort identity. It's about acknowledging how emotional instability, when left unchecked, can override reason. Aggression does not simply explode. It escalates. This is Spilling the Juice Archives, where we do not just react, we analyze. The Spilling the Juice book series is available at spillingthejuice.com and on all major book platforms. STJ Archives, signing off.